let's talk about religion a little bit and what the difference is between organized religion and a cult.
I think this is probably said in jest, but they say that in a cult, there's a person at the top who knows it's a scam, and in a religion, that person's dead.
I think there are people who think that people that join cults are just dumb or stupid. And I would say that they're not right on that.
People have insecurities and chips on their shoulders, and you want to be liked and you want to believe in something greater than yourself.
We're all living in the same challenge, the same quiz, the same test, but it's a different set of rules, even though we're all trying to get to the same end. And that's the majority of a lot of the conflict.
I think that some cult leaders probably actually believe what they're saying themselves, and that's what makes it so potent, the things that they're saying.
Do you think MAGA is a cult? Live from a wardrobe that we thought was Narnia, it's the Socially Awkwards podcast. I am Matrix Stewarts, and he is Branna Montana, and we are the Socially Awkwards. Welcome to the Podrick, Branna. It's going to be a good one today. We're going to talk about cults. You like cults?
I love a good cult.
You were in a cult for a while, right?
I was, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I have been, the only cult I've ever been associated with is difficult. And that is my only cult joke that I have for tonight. Let's talk about cults. Specifically, let's start with the history of cults, all right? But I'm only going to focus on the 20th century and beyond. I don't want to go too far back. I know the dinosaurs were in a cult, but we don't want to discuss that. So let's get into a little bit of cult. You ever heard of the I Am movement and the silver shirts? They emerged during the Great Depression, combining religious claims, charisma, and political extremism. These groups show how economic crisis can help fringe movements grow. I believe that one of the biggest things that cults can succeed at is taking a bad moment in time, such as the Great Depression, where a lot of people are suffering, and they can take advantage of those feelings, right? The 1960s, we have the Children of God, which began as Teens for Christ and later became the Family International. It became one of the most notorious new religious movements of the era. I think people are going to see a big theme with these cults because a lot of them are somewhat religious related, right? And then obviously, I think everyone knows about the 1969 Charles Manson family. Of course, Sharon Tate was murdered, and there was other murders that happened. And that one has been, I think, publicized enough to where I think most people know enough about Charles Manson, who is my godfather. Also, we have the 1978 Jim Jones People's Temple, which ended in the Jonestown Massacre, where 909 people died after ingesting poisoned drinks. Some people say it was Kool-Aid. Some people say it was Diet Tab. This event profoundly shaped modern fears of cults. This one, a little bit before we were born. I remember hearing it. I don't think they really teach you much of anything in school. This is for later, but I'm just saying I don't think they teach you much of anything at all about cults in school, really. They just go through the history and they kind of leave a lot of that stuff out. But I learned about that one later, and that one was kind of crazy, man, that many people, thought that. I think it was like, if I remember correctly, I think that he told them that like the aliens were going to come down and take their bodies and they were going to live like a new, I don't know. It's crazy. Then there's the Branch Davidians, which we had talked about on our 90s podcast episode, which was a standoff in Waco, Texas that ended in a deadly fire and remains one of the most famous cult-related tragedies in U.S. history. The interesting thing about this one is this major event that happened in Waco. This is why Timothy McVeigh was so pissed off at the government. He was mad about them infringing on the Second Amendment rights, and then mad about them coming in and blame them for all their deaths. And the Waco siege ended on April 19th, 1993. The Oklahoma City bombing happened on April 19th, 1995. So McVeigh actually had that date in mind for a reason. So it wasn't,
Yeah, that's
ran
crazy. I heard they had to drop the K off the name of the town to make it more palatable.
the K of Oklahoma City.
No, of Waco.
Oh, well, there's no K in Waco.
I know because they dropped it.
I see. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. Wacko. You're making a wacko joke.
I am. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
All
okay,
right.
my bad. I'm not with it. I apologize to everybody. I didn't sleep well, and it's hot. It's actually hot, Brandon. It's actually finally getting hot. It might not be hot enough for you, but it's hot enough for me, man. Once it starts getting the 80s, I start sweating when I walk.
This is right about the perfect temperature for me.
Perfect.
Yeah, just perfect.
I need it at like the
Yeah.
70s or the 60s. Even the high 60s are okay if it's sunny. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about the NXIVM. Is that a Roman numeral? I don't know. Probably. I'm not going to read that. NXIVM, which is operated as a self-help organization that later became known for coercion, trafficking, and abuse. Its rise showed that cult-like dynamics can appear in secular personal development groups. This happened from 1998 to 2021. So this cult was going on for about 23 years before people were taken down. There was some woman from Canada who was an actress on a show, probably like a WB show, and I can't remember her name, but she got in trouble for there was some trafficking going on. And not the good trafficking. I don't really know what good trafficking would be, but you know what I mean. It wasn't good things. Um, Also, ongoing, we have a lot of people. There might be people that would be critics to this, but we've talked about this before. And before the pod, you'd mentioned the man's name that started this all. But Scientology is obviously a thing that many people would consider a cult. Some people wouldn't. Famously, Leah Remini, who played Kevin James' wife in the show King of Queens, came out as she used to be a Scientologist, and then she kind of came out and just spilled the beans about all the crazy shit that they did. Um, so yeah, I mean, oh, and then also Twin Flames. Have you heard about Twin Flames? Which is another cult that was like they were supposed to be helping you match your flame. And the reason why it's they had a Netflix documentary about some person like escaping it a couple years back. But the reason why I mentioned that one, I don't know if that one's more well known. It's probably not as well known. But that one happened. The people that started that live about 50 miles north of us. So it was a little bit of a closer cult in our locale. Um, Obviously, there's people that would let's talk about religion. Before we dive deep into these cults, let's talk about religion a little bit and what the difference is between organized religion and a cult. And this is where I'd like for you to take over because I think there are some major differences, but I do see I can understand when someone might say, "Hey, you're in a cult if you're in some kind of organized religion." Um, but go ahead. Tell me what you think the difference is, or maybe you already know because you are a brainiac, brainiac. But yeah, just tell me what you think the difference is between organized religion and just a bad, dangerous cult.
So I think that there's differences that you could look up that people who study these things would look to. I think that from my perspective, without looking deeply into this, that the main difference is the benefit that they are to society. And so that's really it on the surface. Is that a cult? Because what is a cult? A cult is like there's a bunch of attributes that a cult usually has, like a charismatic leader that everybody follows, an extreme amount of exclusivity with as far as like their way is the
A
right
lot of
way.
control.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
control. Um, they do things like they demand an extreme amount of loyalty and isolation is a big one, isolating the people from the outside world and saying you.
Information control kind of thing too.
And I think that a lot of religions have some aspects of them that do kind of borrow some of these things to a point where it's in a gray area. But I think that religion should I think that you just look at the result. If the result is a net positive on society, then I actually don't care if it's a cult or not. If it's positive for society, I don't care, and I think it's fine that it exists. If it's neutral, that's also fine because I believe in personal
Yeah,
freedom.
why can't they have just good cults? Like, I feel like cult is just generally just a bad thing. It's a bad term. If you say cult, then you automatically think of bad things. So why aren't there any good cults? I mean, if people said, "Hey, religion is a good cult," or "I'm a Christian and I'm in a good cult," I mean, I would be like, "Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
would
kind
go so far as to say that maybe good cults do exist. We just don't call them cults because cult
right,
has the negative connotation. It means the negative of the group of people. So,
right."
I mean, there's there's a quote by people who research it. I think this is probably said in jest, but they say that in a cult, there's a person at the top who knows it's a scam, and in a religion, that person's dead. So, that's
That's pretty good. I like that. I
yeah.
like that.
I don't
Um,
personally believe that. I believe that religion does have value. I think that some religions have more value than others,
right.
unfortunately. And then there's a spectrum. And then when you get to the more negative side, yeah, you get into the culty
You've
behavior.
said this before, and I'm curious because like me, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're talking about religion, and I'm going to play a devil's advocate. Let
Okay.
let the comments fly. Anyways, I want to talk about how, because I think you could agree with me that over time, since the beginning, religion has probably killed more people, right? Most wars are start because of a religious cause. Like religion, I mean, I guess you would have to kind of get into a little bit, but and maybe it's not number one, but I would say it's killed a lot of people. Like just being in a war, the war happening right now with Iran is it with everything going on with Israel is because of religious reason. It's for religious reasons
Yeah.
usually, and for Iran, it's the same way. There's a religious sect of group in there that wants everybody to live under their God. So um, I think that that's one of the things I just kind of wanted to point out. And I'm not saying that religion's bad. I do obviously see the good things in a religion. We've talked about this before. I believe in God, but I'm just not a big believer in organized religion. Um, however, if we didn't have religion at all, I'm not saying that we wouldn't have that many deaths. We might have more, because then it might be, so there's
Yeah.
a kind of baggage that you have that everything has that you kind of have to take with it.
Yeah. I think that religion has been important. To your point, I'm no, I'm going to split hairs here with the way I say this, and it's going to sound like that's what I'm doing. But I think that to say that most people have died as a result of religion is a little bit different than saying that a lot of people have died in the name of religion. And it's also a little bit different than saying that a lot of people died at the hands of humans who have even more in a disconnected way used religion in some way.
Right.
So the question is, how much is the religion responsible for the people that have died, and how much is the religion used as a plausible excuse for somebody to go on a conquering rampage, and do what they want to do. So, because I think that people have wanted the war for many different reasons. And religion is a really good reason because it's a unifier. Because people believe it to their core,
Yeah.
they'll die for it. I mean, like, how many things are you going to die for the financial stability of your country, or are you going to die? Or are you
No.
going to die for your ultimate salvation?
Like a lifetime supply of donuts. I know that sounds weird.
Sentiments,
I would
yeah,
die for a lifetime supply of donuts, which would
yeah.
just be zero because I'd be dead. But
That's funny. Yeah, that's
but
great.
hey,
But
that's not to me. That's the same as thinking there's going to be 72 or how many ever virgins waiting for you after you die.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, maybe they. What if they're right? That's just kind of crazy. But I mean, I don't know what that
yeah, but I
means.
think if they're right, it's more like a Family Guy version where they like get up there and it's a bunch of nerds on computers,
Yeah,
and that's a little bit funnier, like a little
yeah,
bit. Oh no, I didn't know you meant this.
yeah,
Um, 70. What is it? I don't even. Is 72 even the right number? I hear so many different numbers, but how many would be? It's just a bunch of Sheldon Coopers,
yeah.
and you're just like, oh man. All right.
72.
Well, we talked a little bit about the criteria of what makes a cult, and let's kind of break that down a little bit because you were talking about the leadership. The group is centered around a single charismatic leader who claims ultimate authority, special knowledge, or divine status. So that's another thing you could kind of separate cults with a religion is where the people might believe it like a religion, but the people at top up top, like are crazy people who know, like the quote you had just read, who know that what they're saying is bullshit, but they know that also what they're saying can be used to get more people, and so they're ultimately obviously using those people. Coercive control, the group dictates major life decisions, including careers, finances, and personal relationships, often using manipulation and guilt to enforce compliance. Isolation, we had spoken of that. Members are progressively separated from family, friends, and mainstream society. The group becomes the primary source of support and identity, making it incredibly difficult to leave. Information control, the group restricts access to outside information and discourages critical thinking or any questioning of the leadership. And then, of course, exploitation. Members are often exploited financially through heavy donations or required asset handovers, emotionally or physically, making them increasingly dependent on the organization. Now, I want to say something really important, and I think you would agree with me on this. I think that there might be a stigma with some people and we've obviously never been in a cult. I've never been in a cult. You've never been in a cult. Um, I think there are people who think that people that join cults are just dumb or stupid. And I would say that they're not right on that. I think that it's usually whoever's people can be easily exploited and easily um i- people think that, especially when they're having a hard time in their life, maybe like the twin flames thing, they're having a hard time trying to find love or whatever, find their soulmate. And people can exploit that and people can get enamored in something like that. So the main thing I think the cult does is take some stuff like that that people are yearning for, looking for in their life. It's something usually missing, and it's not stupid people. I think this could happen to anybody, and I really do. I think. So, do you have any comments on that? I mean, you obviously think it's not just stupid people joining cults, right?
I think that all sorts of people can get caught up in cults. But I do understand because I do have sort of this gut feeling that like you have to be stupid to get caught up in one. But
Yeah,
I think that um, people have insecurities and chips on their shoulders, and you want to be liked, and you want to believe in something greater than yourself. You want to believe that you're part of. You want to believe that you have impact in your life, that you're doing the right thing. And there's a search for identity, belonging, purpose. And I also think that people joining a cult don't necessarily, you don't know that you're joining a cult. You're not handed the
well, yeah,
paper that says
right,
like check
right.
this
Join my
box.
cult. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's a slow, gradual process. It's like,
Do you like us? Check yes or no.
yeah, you might think that you're just part of a small group that like, I mean, we all have known somebody who's really charismatic before, and
Yeah,
people that
Gumby.
we would follow. I've had good bosses where I was like, I'm happy to follow this person, and I've had bad bosses where I'm like, I don't want to follow this person. So I've had people where I would follow them and they could make a questionable choice. Like, you know, um, I don't know if I'm going to think of a good example right now, but they might make a questionable choice that under a different circumstance, I might second guess. But to them, I'm like, I trust that that the result that they're going to achieve is going to be fine because they're a competent person who's charismatic and they've done good in the past. They've had, good results with their actions. So I'm like, I'm going to follow them. So first, at first it's just, um, you follow them into a store and they're like, hey, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example like they're stealing something, and I'm like, I don't know if I would do that, but I think that it starts small. It's like you do something that's like a little misstep against what you normally would do, something against your
Right.
normal purpose, and then they take you all the way down to the rabbit hole before you know you're drinking Kool-Aid or you're killing somebody. So
Yeah, and as we said before, a lot of these charismatic leaders are going to the big thing. One of the reasons why they're using religious aspects in their cult is because they know people will touch upon that. They know people. There's some people just out there lost in a faith. They don't know what faith they are. They don't know. They'd be like, okay, I'm Christian, but what like dividend or whatever they, like what am I specifically? Because that can mean so many things. And the one thing that's always bothered me about religion's really funny in a way, and I guess I'm kind of going on a little tangent that's a little bit kind of cult adjacent, but we're going to stick with it. But one of the things about religion that's always crazy to me is that we have all these people in the world who are taking examples from the same book, but they're all trying to win in the end. They're all trying to get to the glory in the end by dying and get to have, the glory, the almighty, whatever you want to say. And but we're all doing the same quiz. We're all doing the same test, but we're all living by different rules because it's different religions or different, denominations or whatever it is of that religion. And these are all kind of being, and these are things that have been kind of chalked down through the years and different interpretations from different people. And so it's really crazy to me that we're all living in the same challenge, the same quiz, the same test, but it's a different set of rules, even though we're all trying to get to the same end. And that's the majority of a lot of the conflict. And it's just a weird kind of thing to think about. But what makes cults so dangerous, Brandon? What makes them dangerous?
I think I think that one of the things that makes them dangerous, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, so some of this is going to be obvious, but I think it's when you get to the point that people are willing to do things that are bad for society, because they're following the the orders of the person at the top or the people at the
Yeah.
top,
Yeah.
and they're willing to do these things at risk of their own life.
Yeah. And I mean, Timothy McVeigh, technically not part of a cult himself, or not that I'm aware of, but was so upset with, how the whole Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas was dealt with. Um, you're right. It was bad enough to where they had to take the K off, and everybody's like, no, it's called Waco. Um, but yeah, and then what does he do? Like he's so upset by the government killing women, children, and men, servicemen, who had been in service with, I don't know if they were with him, but they had been in service in a war, and that he goes out and kills a bunch of women, men, and children in a federal building in Oklahoma City. So it's like, but it's strange. It's kind of like one of those things where like you're pro life, so you go burn down an abortion clinic
Full of people.
full of people,
Yeah.
and you're just like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense, but there's these kind of opposite clashing things that happen with viewpoints all the time. And yeah, cults can be super dangerous in that way. Obviously, the whole Manson thing, I mean, thankfully, like, they didn't cause as much damage. Unfortunately, they killed a few people, but I feel like they were on route or on track to do way more damage. But luckily they were caught beforehand. And Charles Manson I mean, he only died here, like, I don't know, probably within the last 5-10 years. And I thought at one point they released him, or they were thinking about releasing him, because he was just so, like, how he was unhealthy and unwell. Which is weird that we do that. Just go ahead and keep him in there the whole time. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But um, what do you think are? Let's talk a little bit more about the leadership qualities of a cult.
The leadership qualities. Well, I mean, it's basically charisma is how I would describe it. I don't know. I mean, you could break that down into somebody who talks easily and passionately and persuasively about their
Yeah,
ideas and what they're into. Somebody
yeah,
who, there are certain people who sort of you talk in a way to where you can just tell that what they're saying is true. And this might just come down to great acting. I think that some cult leaders probably actually believe what they're saying themselves, and that's why what makes it so potent, the things that they're saying. Um, and I also feel like cult leaders tend to have, I could be wrong, but there's sort of something unassuming about them sometimes. Like, not really giant, big, hulking, scary figures, but like kind of like
Right, yeah.
average people that are easy to sort of let get under your skin at first. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think those are some of the qualities that
Would you
I've noticed.
say excuse me, I had a frog in my throat. I I ate I ate some things. Um, would you say that, like, the KKK is a cult? I
Well,
don't know if
yeah.
I mean, they don't do they have a charismatic leader? I feel like that's just they're really good at just getting people who are racist, right? And who have just a lot of hate. And if you have that much hate, then you probably don't need much of a charismatic leader. You're just like, "Oh, let's just all join together because we all hate the same thing." And so it's kinda I don't know, just it kind of came up on my mind, and I was just thinking about it for a second, so I thought I'd get your viewpoint because I'm not really sure if I'd consider it a cult, but it's certainly not a good thing.
Yeah, I'd be fine lumping it under the category of cults, but I think that you probably have local chapters of like the most charismatic person rises to the top.
Yeah.
I don't know if the KKK is as prominent um as they used to be when you had what was the name of the guy, the head guy? You know the name. It's a
Oh, I
very popular
forgot.
name.
I forgot his name.
Let's just call him Mikey.
I know who we voted for, though.
Who's that?
Well, I don't wanna say, if we're talking about the same guy,
Yeah.
because this was a guy recently who
David
used to be
Duke.
the head.
I'm
Yes,
thinking
David
of
Duke.
David Duke, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Good alliteration name, and I still forgot it.
yeah. So I'm thinking of people like that probably did have a charismatic quality to the people that followed him. And I think that you see other groups spring up. You know, we hear of names like Proud Boys, but there's like I think that the reason why those names exist is because there's somebody at the top that sort of is like makes it that that makes it come out of the shadows where it's like this person's talking all the time. They have videos out there. They have, content and so it's still sort of that charismatic leader quality I think that's propelling these things. So yeah, KKK, I'm fine calling it a cult, but I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you where it's like I'm not sure what it is right now.
Yeah, and I will say that I mean, we keep talking about charismatic leader, but I will say that there's all the time, if you're charismatic, you're gonna be rising to the top. And this just isn't in cults. I mean, like you just talked about, like maybe a boss at work or something. Usually, those are the type of people that people follow, or that it maybe listen to for advice and stuff. So it's not just cults where obviously they have charismatic leaders. We have charismatic leaders all over. We have political charismatic leaders like all the time. Um, Now, what about why do people join cults? Well, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. It's usually because they're missing something, or so they see something, and whether it's love or just a reason for being, or whether faith or whatever it is. Um, Cults, I guess, give them like a place to belong. You are going to get, like you said, it's not like you're going to know it's a cult, but you are going to get like the sense of community that maybe you didn't have before, and that's going to feel good at first. I could totally see why that would feel good. And
Yeah.
then later, and then once you get deep into it, and your friend, and that's obviously probably why they separate, but your friends or your family are going to be the ones that notice, and then they try to probably, separate you from that so that you don't like try to get out of it. um but also, I just think that the people that in these cults, sometimes they just get too far in, and it doesn't matter what their friends and family say. They're just in it, and that's why I was trying to say before, is I think there is somewhat of a stigma, or some type of the way people think that they think that these people that are getting into cult are just dumb people. I
Yeah.
just think that, that's why it's like, I don't think that maybe there probably are some dumb people easily manipulated. I mean, I do feel like there are people who can be manipulated easier. But I look at it a lot like homelessness almost. It's like you just never know. You just never know what could happen.
Well, what I've seen too is where I think that somebody who's highly intelligent can still be manipulated in a way to where, because what's happening is when you're highly intelligent, you're able to rationalize bad behavior with a deeper, more complex level of reasoning, right? I still think like intelligence is basically like pattern recognition combined with speed is what I like to think of as just intelligence. And that's separate from things like how do you change a car tire, which might be more lumped into wisdom. So like I think people that are more intelligent, you still like you can pattern recognize, but you can also create bad patterns in your head. So you're saying, why am I following this person, into this house, or why am I doing this bad thing that I'm part of a cult? Why am I drinking this Kool-Aid? And it's like the dumb person might have one level deep of rationalization for why they're doing that. They might say because that person said, and I trust them with all my heart. And somebody who's smarter might still be manipulated to say like, well, if you consider that they did this, but they probably did it because of A, B, and C, and I know on the surface what I'm doing is bad, but if you think about the effects that's going to happen, like you could justify some warped version of events that ultimately turns out good or is true or that must happen as a result. This is why I think that regardless of your level of intellect, that you can be susceptible to a cult. Um, and I think that people also reach periods of susceptibility because you go through, like, everybody deals with grief. You have divorce, loneliness, unemployment, identity
Yeah.
crisis that could happen, uh, addiction. Addiction can touch anybody regardless of intelligence level. And so when you find yourself in one of these places too, you become susceptible to these types of, like, to latching onto something, and then your intelligence just lets you create a deeper hole of rationalizations that are more complex, but it doesn't necessarily help you on the surface of just saying no to something that we think is obvious you should say no to.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Everything that you just said, I agree with to make it easier
All
for
right.
everybody.
Okay.
Um, here's one. Now I've watched a few like of these. I don't know if you've ever seen these like YouTube videos where like maybe you'll see some where it's like North Koreans that defected and they tell you how they got out. But I've seen a few with cults where they've gotten out of a cult and they explain that it's not an easy thing to do. So I mean, do you have any thoughts or any maybe somebody's out there right now, maybe one of the few people that watch our videos is going through something like this where maybe they're questioning, in whatever movement they're just begun to follow or whatever, and they don't want to get too far in. Or maybe there's people who, their family members are like, how do I get my family member out of this cult? Do you have any kind of advice for them or anything that you might, that you can think of that might help them get somebody out of a cult?
Yeah, I think that if you're in this situation, you need to probably seek professional help, because whatever advice I give you, I don't feel qualified that it's going to be good. Um,
Hmm.
because I know that a cult is probably going to work. Like, it's going to take that person, it's going to slowly isolate them, and to the point where now the only you're being bottle fed your support system, and it's your only method of support, right? So if you take that cult away from them, that person is just completely alone, drifting in isolation. They don't. It's sort of like when you think about people who are alcoholics, and they've gotten to the point where their entire living, their being everyday existence is alcohol and drinking alcohol and having friends that do that. And then you take that away. One of the biggest problems is that they don't have anything to fill that with. Now they have this giant void in their life. And and that's why programs like the 12-step program work so well, I think, for alcoholics, is because it's a support system of people that are all on the same journey together, and it's a new community that you can replace your old one with. I bet that, getting out of a cult, there's probably like a 12-step there's probably a similar program like for alcoholics for people like that who can come together as a community of people. So I would search those out, and also search out the experts and see, yeah, what the advice is. Maybe a psychiatrist, psychologist, and there's probably methods out there.
Yeah, there's definitely probably some specialists that families can call that specialize in this exact very thing and helping them get out. Rambo would be one. He might help. He's kind of old now, but he might. Who cares?
Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky. Those are two separate people, so that'll work. Um, yeah, but yeah, I just think that yeah, and I didn't mean to paint you in a corner there, but I do get it. Like, yeah, you just don't know, especially if somebody really is in a situation. I don't think we have enough people that are watching our videos that they are in a cult, but it doesn't mean that one day, if we blow up and somebody's watching this video 3 years from now, you know,
Yeah.
who knows?
We might be
So I get
this
it.
might be a cult right here. If you're watching this
Yeah,
video, you might be in a cult with
you're in a
us.
cult. Join us because we are very charismatic. No,
We're gonna
we're
do
we're not
great.
we're not very charismatic on the show. Um, I'm probably more charismatic in real life, but it's harder to portray that you know, on a screen. Um, here's a question for you because I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, and maybe a few of our viewers would also want to know. Do you think MAGA is a cult?
I think MAGA is a cult.
You're not doing enough ceiling looking.
Well, I'm considering the question.
hmm That's the first part of answering it.
I don't think MAGA is a cult, no. I think there are some obvious cult-like qualities, but I think that if I'm a part like if I were to consider myself MAGA, I think it would be easier to then consider myself not MAGA than it would be for for other cults that we know historically, where it's like you once you're in it, you can't really not be a part of it.
Right. Yeah. I get what you're saying now. You confused me at first, but then you brought me back.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think it's quite like trying to get out of Scientology. I think you can be MAGA and then the next day you can say, "Hey, I don't like Trump anymore," and then you're gonna fight with people. But I don't know if it's gonna be the same level of you're not gonna be excommunicado necessarily. I think that's just one example that I'm thinking of. But I do see the parallels where you're saying there's there's a charismatic person at the top, charismatic in quotations, depending on who you talk to.
Right.
And
Right.
then you have
But I
people,
like the fact that you said that a lot of these charismatic leaders probably believe in a lot of what they're saying, even when it's a blatant lie. And I do feel like that might be our current president. I do feel like he believes a lot of stuff that is actually not, that most people would be like, "What? Okay, that's not right." But go ahead.
yeah. Well, no, I'll just stop it there. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, I will say this. I think that I don't like when people label it as a cult. I understand why people think it's a cult, but I do think you're right. I think that there have been people who have gotten who it's not like they're stuck in it. There have been that's as simple like as voting, right? Or simply as saying, "Oh, I don't support him anymore." Or even if you're on the fence, even if you're like, I like this is what I like what he does, and these are the things that I don't like that he does. And that to me would be like not cult like behavior because they're rationing things out and they're being logical. So I do believe that. I do think that brand has done a really good job at getting at however they've gotten certain people. I think that they've done a good job in that way. I think that they've been able to connect with certain people in a cult-like way, but, to try to get it, to get them into believing things. We had talked about before how we're gonna get to the point with AI political messaging to where AI is gonna be able to read all the data of everything that you've ever done, and they're gonna know what you are politically, and then these political groups, whether it's MAGA or whether it's, traditional Republicans or whether it's, the old establishment Democrats or the new democratic socialism that's starting to emerge, whatever it is, they're gonna be able to cater an AI advertising video to you and only you. So we're gonna get to a point to where everybody is seeing a different type of political ad, on their phones or whatever. And it's going to be kind of crazy. And I really hate that because I don't think that should be allowed. But it's just kind of the times that we're in, and but yeah,
I actually have a
um,
counterpoint. I,
go
I think that AI, and I'm this is an opinion that I'm a little bit echoing because I heard it from somebody, but I think it makes sense for me personally, and I hope it makes sense for society at large. But it's that AI might actually depolarize society. And the reason why is because AI is trained on all of the internet. And so what it spits out is generally like the average of everything.
right,
And so what we've been seeing is algorithms that are designed to show you things that you've looked at that you engage with. So then it gives you more and more of that, which ends up creating these like widening lanes of polarization that are the algorithms trying to finely tune, whatever triggers you or whatever makes you respond, right? So you watch it, you comment on it or whatever. So I think the fact that AI is sort of averaging everything, I think that people that interact with AI will tend to also average out their opinions because AI, like I use AI all the time, and AI I feel like does a good job of basically just being a fence rider a lot of times. And and I know that that gets a bad rap, but I believe that that's actually where the truth is closer to, where the truth in a lot of subjects feels like fence riding. It's like take like abortion, like you have the I understand pro-choice and I understand pro-life, and I believe in aspects of both of them. I think that the real fence ride is like, do we really know where life begins? Like first off, and do we really know
that's my biggest thing. Yeah,
and like we don't like we just don't know. We know when a heartbeat kind of begins, and we know where when we think maybe consciousness begins. But like we don't know what the definitions of this stuff is. So like we have ideas. Like some people says I think it's a heartbeat, and to some other people they think I think it's consciousness. To some people it's when you can feel pain. Um, but but it's such a fuzzy gray area that of course we're going to be at odds about this. And yeah, there's religious influence and other influences, but even if you stripped all those things away, I still don't think that we would absolutely perfectly agree on when you can abort or if you can abort because we just don't know. We don't know when life begins. And so I think that's where AI does a good job is it sort of just says, "You know what? Here's the debates." And science hasn't really given us a perfect middle point. We're not really sure.
yeah. You just yeah. We don't know when to control alt delete life sometimes. I will say that that I feel like okay, so what I was telling you about how they're going to cater the ads politically, in the way that'll work, the strongest, to get that vote or whatever it is. This was a YouTube video I was watching of Bernie Sanders talking to Claude, and this is what Claude had told him. So my guess counterpoint to what you just said would be, could there be people who write a specific algorithm and make AI do that for them? Where it's not, I mean, is AI going to still be, unbiased, or can they make AI be biased itself?
Yeah, I think you can make AI biased for sure.
Right. So I
But
think that's the
yeah.
point where I would be a little worried.
But for your AI to be biased, you're purposefully making a subpar AI, intellectually
Well,
speaking.
yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely.
and we have all these metrics and benchmarks that we're using on the latest models to say like right now companies like Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI, Anthropic, they're competing. One of the ways they compete with their AIs is by going to these benchmarks and saying like an example of a benchmark might just be like the SATs, right? That people do. They can't really use SATs as a benchmark because AIs can just ace those now. So I don't
Yeah.
think those are really hard enough. But you can so you create these which are basically like tests and you run all these AI, these new models against it, and whoever does the best, it gets crowned the king, and then people sort of like think like, oh, this is the king. I'm going to use this for coding. I'm going to use it for this and that, and it sort of is the model that wins, and then that money flows to that company for the people who use that.
Right.
So so for somebody to make a biased AI like super politically biased, um, you could do that, but yeah, you're just sort of hamstringing it. You're like, and so it is a risk. I don't know in the long run if those are the AIs that are going to take off and run the furthest. I don't.
No, I don't think they would. I think that that would be the only reason why they would create it, would be
Yeah.
strictly to get a vote.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, that's trash. We're done with that or whatever.
That's true. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's possible.
so
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
possible.
yeah, so that's a little bit of the worry. But all right, so that's kind of our thought on cults. Let's just say this. If you're in a cult, is there free food involved?
Yeah.
If there is, then give me a call. If there's like donuts involved,
Entenmann's.
Entenmann donuts, or actually, Entenmann makes wonderful, great products. I shouldn't just limit them to donuts because they make wonderful different pastries
If
items.
there's Starry lemon lime soda.
Hmm. Brandon will be involved
Yep.
in that.
If
If there was a
there.
food base, basically, if there's a good food based call, just let us know, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll be there with you.
Yeah. I thought you were
I
gonna
don't know.
say, hey, if you're in a cult, don't.
Yeah, well,
Don't.
that would be a good thing
Just
too.
don't.
Yeah, just don't do it.